Hey everybody, I am joined right now by a man you know as the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Nick Aldis. How you doing today?
I'm good, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Your title reign sits at 914 days right now, an impressive number in itself. In just 12 more days, you would tie Harley Race for sixth all time. First I'll ask you, do you sit and like kind of watch where the number is? Like, are you a stats guy, or are you just kind of enjoying like, hey, it's still my reign. It's, it still speaks for itself.
Well, I'm definitely not a stats guy. There's a group of guys who now do the official NWA post show on the YouTube channel, and they're a group called This Is Pro Wrestling, but they started as This Is the NWA. And one of the guys in that group, a guy by the name of Robert Stinson, he's my stats guy. He updates me on how many days it's been, and they do, because they do all kinds of cool stuff on their channel where they do sort of historical pieces, and Doc's really great at reminding me, like, oh, hey, today's the anniversary of this, or today would have been so and so's birthday, and things like that. But I look, and it gets brought up, and I find I tend to get like a bunch of heat for it from the people who are like, oh, well, what about the pandemic? Oh, it doesn't count, or and I'm going, well, I didn't bring it up. It's just an unusual situation for in the modern era for someone to hold a championship for this long. So I'm just kind of like, if I sorry if you're upset about the lack of wrestling matches that happened during a global pandemic, but aside from that, it's a cool feeling to know that historically it'll be up there with some all-time greats. But really that's more of a sort of novelty thing for me. On a professional level, it's just rewarding to know that I'm still considered the best guy for the job at this point in time after 2 years.
Mm-hmm. I did want to bring up another stat, but really quick, you make an interesting point. Like, people get mad at you for like, oh, the pandemic, and it's like, yeah, that literally was out of your control. Like, you were the champion going into it. It had nothing to do with you. So why would that change anything? Just like,
and I did still defend the title a few times. I think look, everything unfortunately now with social media gets amplified. Everyone's, the critics' voices are amplified tenfold, by their own sort of echo chamber, and there's no news like bad news. So it's like people just love to sort of harp on all the things they don't like, and it's not. So I certainly don't want to get into a sort of big philosophical discussion, but I do think that has an overall effect on the overall sort of size of the audience and maybe the health of the industry. That sometimes the people who really love it sometimes sort of love it a bit too much and kind of smother it, and it makes it a little difficult for other people to join in, because it's this very opinionated, very toxic sort of environment where I worry sometimes that potentially new fans are sort of looking at it and going, oh, I don't know if I want to wade in on all that. These guys seem really aggressive. And it's, I always liken it to if you own a bar or a pub and you've got your locals that sit at the bar every night. Like, it's cool that they're there, but, if you're going to decide you're going to do a quiz night once a week, or you're going to start doing food, or you're going to have a band in and stuff, and they go, oh, what the hell? Like, I can't believe you're bringing a band in. Oh, this is terrible. I'm not coming in. You have to sort of go, okay, cool. Well, don't come in then. Like, you'll come back tomorrow. Like, we can't. It's not just for you. It's for everyone. you know, and I tend to sort of, when it gets into too much of that, I just kind of disconnect from it all and just kind of go, okay, well, enjoy yourselves. I'm just trying to be a good pro wrestler and, you know, make some money.
Yeah. There's been various ways it's been explained, but one that stuck with me, CM Punk used the analogy like with, it wasn't even wrestling fans, it was he's doing a horror movie, and he was like, you know, why do horror fans want the genre to be their thing and only their thing? You should want it to grow and prosper so that more fans come in and you get more of it, instead of trying to hold on to your idea of it. And
Yes.
more to your point, I agree. Like, wrestling fans are very dedicated, yes, but at the same time, they're also very, you know, almost controlling as to what they want to let in. And it's like, why not let everyone enjoy it how they want, instead of focusing on trying to keep things the way you want it?
Yeah, and I think now we sort of sometimes certain fans tend to sort of forget that, like, some of us, you know, well, first of all, we're this is our livelihood, but also there are certain people, like in our case, Billy, who are like putting up, you know, their own money to try to make something happen. So like you know, if you've decided for whatever reason that you don't want to, like, you know, one of our big things now is, you know, I don't want to pay to watch the show, subscribe. Okay, well, we anticipated that, but do you really need to like publicly declare that, you know, to sort of try to spread that message? Like, I don't really what are you trying to achieve by doing that? Like, we're going to see, oh, you know, Bob Smith in you know, Arkansas is outraged that we want $5. Like, so we better change our whole business model, you know? And it's just kind of like, people have, there's a lot of culture now throughout the industry, not just fans, but sort of everyone, where sometimes people are more concerned about being right than about doing good business, you know. And that's been a major issue in the industry for, you know, in the big companies for a long time. Like, certain people, you can just see, no matter what they do, they're just not going to get you know, they're just not going to get a fair shake, simply because a certain person there has just decided that, you know, they can't be wrong, you know. So instead of saying, hey, you know what, maybe I was wrong about this person, they're going to just, hey, screw the fans, screw the industry, you know, screw the success of the business. I'm just going to make sure that I prove myself right. And it's, you know, it sucks, but it's always been part of the business.
Yeah, wrestling's a very interesting business, and no
Yes.
shortage of talks about being political and whatnot. But I do want to talk about the growth of the NWA by joining Fight. You did some work with them in the interim while you guys were kind of waiting to see what happened. The NWA was involved with Primetime Live, and you told Conan it wasn't an NWA product, but it was still a way to keep the connection with fans. So,
Right.
how would you classify that era, like the past year for the NWA? Like, what? Because you didn't go away, and you already said that it wasn't an NWA product, but how would you really classify that? Because you're still featuring talent and
Well, it was a third party that was booking, you know, NWA talent, and the NWA was sort of helping to promote, you know, the NWA talent appearances on that show. But, you know, that was as far as the relationship went. And it was, you know, it's just important to protect the integrity of the NWA brand by making sure that people are aware that, hey, you know, the stuff that you see on these shows that features NWA talent is, you know, yes, obviously the NWA has some influence on it, but whatever else you see, like, that's someone else.
Mhm.
And no one seems to bring this up when an NWA talent is on AEW, because everyone understands the dynamic.
Mhm.
But, you know, for whatever reason, that other show, you know, there seems to be confusion with it. And it wasn't, there's nothing aggressive or hostile about it. It's just trying to make sure that that nothing is misrepresented.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure if it was because it was specifically branded that way, if you said that because there was the confusion, because like you said, more to your point, when other talent, when NWA talent goes on another show, it's understood that they're representing the NWA, but now you're getting a chance to really solidify this is an NWA product with Fight. As I mentioned, you did some work with them in the interim. Why can you get into a little bit about why the timing for the deal was right instead of maybe a few months earlier? What, like, obviously understanding the pandemic and vaccinations and all that probably went into it, but what made this the right time to jump on with Fight?
Well, I mean, again, I think it's important to emphasize always that, while I am given a lot of liberty to speak on behalf of the NWA, obviously, it's not my company. And any influence I have is purely as, in a sort of advisory role, right? Like it's, obviously, like Billy and I have a very close relationship, and my fingerprints are on a lot of the brand, but I can't speak to all of that because some of it is above my pay grade. It's some of it is just comes down to sort of Billy's decisions to act when he felt the time was right. One thing I would say is that as far as the timing of the Fight deal, really the one of the main factors was the fact that there was another offer on the table from another streaming service, and it was simply a case of, to your point, I had been working with Fight. Mike Weber and I have worked together dating back to TNA, so we had a very well-established relationship and rapport, and it was just one of those things where when I was made aware of this streaming offer, this offer from a streaming service, that I, just as a businessman, I just said, do you think it's worth seeing if Fight were interested in throwing their name in? And the main reason the timing, the main issue of the timing for me that made me think of it was just the fact that they had just made a boatload of money on the Roy Jones Mike Tyson pay-per-view, because I had done a roundtable for that event, and it was just I got a call from Mike Weber, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to throw you a bonus, for this the thing, because the pay-per-view did so well, and and he told me the number, and I kind of went, wow, that's serious. That ain't soft money.
That's some scratch."
Yeah, and I just said to Billy, what's the worst that can happen? They're not interested in sort of working on a deal like that. Like, so what? It doesn't really change anything. But I said it's worth. I said, if nothing else, just for leverage. So that was that. And then I made the connection. And obviously we were doing pay-per-views on Fight already, so it wasn't like Billy and Mike were unfamiliar with each other. It was just I literally just made the suggestion, like, they might be interested, and then I stepped away from it, and they worked it out. And then the next time I was sort of looped back in was basically to be told, hey, we got a deal done with Fight. We're going with Fight, so great. And now that they've been bought by Triller, it's an exciting place to be.
Yeah, you're certainly seeing the benefits of streaming, where even like 5 years ago there was the conversation of, oh, cable's going to go away, but not yet. And it was kind of like, not yet. And now it's here. You're seeing that with Fight and MLW, and just WWE going to Peacock, like it's here, but do you feel like the being on the app almost helps build goodwill with fans who maybe thought like, oh, I don't know where I'm going to watch NWA, and now having like like you had a stable home on YouTube, but at least there's, you know, some brand stability in Fight. It's not where do I find it? You don't have to put up a where to watch thing. It's just, hey, it's on the Fight app. You can do it on your phone and do it on your TV if it supports
Sure.
it.
Sure. I mean, look, I think that those of us paying attention would, you know, would say that Fight has incredible growth potential in terms of sort of permeating the mainstream. They had a killer year in the pandemic. They're one of the, you know, they're one of the lucky ones who it was a blessing for them, because suddenly a whole load of different sports and different forms of live entertainment turned to them, because they weren't able to sell tickets. So in order to sort of, you know, be sustainable, they realized that working out some, you know, on-demand pay-per-view events was doable. So as a result, you know, Fight had tremendous growth, and obviously Triller shared that opinion. So, you know, and so now to be in a position where it feels like we're in on the ground floor with something that has the you know, has the potential to really have you know, really grow way beyond any of our expectations, is an exciting place to be. And I think, look, we're not naive. I'm certainly aware that taking the show from YouTube to putting it on Fight TV behind a paywall, you know, albeit a very small one at $4.99 a month, it wasn't like we didn't expect every single one of the YouTube subscribers to immediately become paid Fight subscribers to the, you know, to the NWA service. But in the long run, it's we look at it as where everything is headed. And this is just me talking, but I can say that for the most part, I'm pretty confident that Billy shares the same opinion, that we see the overall industry becoming more fragmented into kind of niche premium products that rely on a more frequent basis as far as revenue and audience. And then the bigger play becoming these giant sort of mega events where a bunch of different entities come together to present, you know, massive kind of sort of spectaculars. That's the way I perceive it. And look, this is not anyone who's familiar with Japan will know that that's in many ways is kind of the model there. It has always been to an extent. Obviously, they have a very dominant market leader in New Japan, but Wrestle Kingdom has often been that way, where they feature you know, matchups and talents from, you know, multiple different sort of credible promotions that come together for that, you know, that one big event, and they understand the benefit of it for everyone involved. That's where I see the business going. And for us, it's we knew we would have to, you know, it was going to be an uphill battle, because to go from a lack of activity to then going to a paywall is not ideal. You know, it's certainly not. But obviously, Fight were willing to jump in, and there are again, it's easy for you know Joe Wrestling to sit behind his keyboard and look at it and go, well, that was a dumb idea. What a stupid thing to do. Oh, you've lost, what are they doing? They need eyeballs, right? But not if the eyeballs never convert to dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also unaware of the structure of the deal with our streaming partner. You know, we're not the only person sort of paying the bills anymore, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So there are, while there are additional pressures in the sense of right now we have to build our audience one at a time all over again with a paid model. We also have some relaxed pressures in the sense that like now we have a partner who are sort of who are well funded and are and are on board with our ideas and want us to grow. That's the key to any partnership of this level, is you have to be in business with someone who genuinely wants you to succeed, and that's the way that I certainly feel about Fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there was another argument about, okay, it's $5, which is a really good deal if you look at what is included. You get 3 new episodes of Power Surge, access to the archived content. But there was a argument about, okay, well, why didn't they do a higher paywall? And it's like, okay, they're the fans that they're going to convert to that, they're going to pay because they're dedicated, they believe in the product. And the people that are complaining about it, they're not paying $5. So why would they, you know what I mean? Like, they're still not paying either way. So it's more to your point about,
look, everybody's an expert, everybody knows what you should have done, and you just have to just let that stuff roll off you. The other, again, we're big picture thinkers, Billy and I. We're not, it's not short money we're after here. And I would say that certainly for me, my personal sort of priority obviously is to continue to build as much value in my own brand as possible, and build as much value in the NWA brand and in NWA Power. But on a wider level, I would suggest that what you will see moving forward is almost more of an NWA network type situation, because that's one of the reasons why the subscription model, if you go to Fight, you don't subscribe to NWA Power, you subscribe to the NWA on Fight, sort of like the NWA network.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that means that as we move forward, and as of now, I can say that we are ahead of projections for subscribers and revenue. We start to then explore more programming, and that won't come at an extra cost. It will be part of the subscription. Mm-hmm. That's certainly the way that I'm looking at things. And even in the last week, we've had several very exciting conversations about various different sort of potential ideas to expand on that concept. So I think that that's probably something I would expect to see, by year end, is expanded programming in the same subscription, under the same subscription umbrella.
Hmm. And this is all going to be NWA on Fight, which is good to see. And I know you've been asked, so I won't ask again, but it's good to see that you want to build the brand up personally, build the NWA brand up. You've been asked about, well, why haven't you shown up on other places? So I'll ask you the flip side of it. Is there anybody that you want to see come to NWA, and not even just step up to you, but maybe you feel like could be the next star or be a breakout talent that can help the NWA brand grow itself, instead of constantly being asked, well, why don't you go somewhere else?
Sure. Well, I'm glad that you frame it like that, because to me, it's just difficult for me to get asked that question the other way, because there's no way to answer it without it coming across as some sort of hostile or aggressive, line in the sand against AEW or, whoever else. And it's like, I was part of All In. I was there at Ring of Honor doing cross promotional stuff. whilst Nick and Matt and Cody and, you know, and those guys were sort of
on their way out,
planning this stuff and figuring this stuff out and you know, deciding to sort of go, you know, and going for it. And obviously Tony Khan was in the mix somewhat. And I've had conversations with Tony and you know, they're very amicable. It was more, for me, it was just a case of like, look, I put a lot of my time and a lot of my, you know, my blood, sweat and tears into getting this from what people considered a dead brand to, you know, to a point where it was where the idea of a title match, you know, anywhere in the world was generating instant excitement, you know. And I basically decided that at this point in my life and my career, outside of an incredible offer, you know, for, you know, a real life-changing offer, I would rather, you know, dedicate the rest of my efforts to seeing this through as far as I can take it. So, you know, in no, like, in no way do I, it was sort of ever intended to be aggressive towards anyone else. But to answer your question about other guys, I've mentioned before that I personally think that Joe Hennig could be somebody who, in the NWA world, there are certain shows and certain brands that that fit very well with certain talent, for, you know, sometimes for obvious reasons and for sometimes less obvious. But with Joe Hennig, I feel like the reasons are very obvious. You know, third generation guy from one of the greatest wrestling legacies of all time, and perhaps a guy whose talent was not fully appreciated, or I don't even say appreciated, because that's I can't speak to that. That's not fair for me to say, but certainly not showcased, in my opinion, as well as it could have been. And like, when you look at not only his own lineage, but also the fact that he trained with Harley Race, you know, for me, the key is being different. And the way that we're different now is that we're not old school, right? Like, that's not, like, people kind of like to throw that out there, and I usually identify those people who haven't really seen it. You know, they've just kind of seen enough to be like, oh yeah, like, that's old school. And it's really more picking a lane that now it's kind of a contrast to a lot of the stuff that you're seeing now. So yeah, like, studio wrestling obviously is associated with a different era, and but our emphasis really just comes down to, our emphasis wants to be on authenticity and wants to be on escapism, that, you know, and for me, true escapism in wrestling requires authenticity. It requires it to be believable. You know, you can say escapism to sort of justify anything, right? Creative license, like, oh, this guy teleported, or this guy, you know, came back from the dead, or, and it's like, again, if that's, you know, other places want to do that stuff, like, more power to them. It's not, you know, it doesn't bother me. But for me personally, watching it, it's hard for me to suspend my disbelief to that extent, you know. And as a fan, I never needed to go that far. Again, I'm not, you know, I'm not, oh, this is bullshit. But I never needed that level of creative license to be invested in something. And in fact, what I preferred was like was something that I could relate to, which is, you know, two guys with egos, you know, two guys competing for a prize, two guys wanting to make their mark on the industry, two guys wanting to achieve something that very few people have ever achieved. Those are all things that anyone with a competitive nature can understand. And that's really the backbone of NWA programming, is it's appealing to true human nature, like competitiveness, ego, greed, you know, and a sense of purpose.
I think this is probably like too philosophical, but I think you kind of you like you're saying choosing your lane, but you kind of choose what kind of wrestling you like when you first kind of fall in love with it. So if you know, like if you like this one, that's great. You're gonna be more the offshoots of what you love are going to be more appealing than what you didn't like as a kid and all of those offshoots.
Maybe.
So
I would even say to that as well, though, that often, and again, I know I made reference to certain things and people will take that to mean like I was taking a shot at this show or that show or anything, but I'm just using them as examples because at one point in time, I probably would have really got a kick out of those. Mm-hmm. Like when I was a kid.
Yeah, but some of them seem silly now.
Right.
So it's like,
I was mesmerized by the Undertaker and Kane angle, you know, and things like that. But then, you know, I go back and look at it now, I sort of go, oh, when he shot lightning out of his hand, like it doesn't quite, like when I was a kid, it was like, whoa, you know, but now I sort of go and went, it was well done, but it's, yeah, I don't know how enthralled by that I would be at 34. So it's like, that's okay too, and that's why when I see some of the stuff that other shows do, I'm understanding like it's not all about me. It's like kind of like what we were talking about earlier with fans. You know, it's like this show is not made just for you. It's not a la carte wrestling just the way you like it. Mm-hmm. You know, like it's a taster menu, and like if there are parts of it that you know that don't appeal to you as much as other parts, you just shut the fuck up about it and just like let that part go and just enjoy the bits you do. You know, it's just.
Yeah,
it's hard otherwise.
I've made the argument where it's like, okay, you believe, like, will you still use the Undertaker and as an example? It's like, okay, you spent 30 years believing he was a dead guy and had superpowers and all this stuff, but then you're like going to go and criticize whatever it is that is on now, and it's like you know pushed reality aside for this for so long, but now you want to criticize it. It's like, why not just stay quiet and watch this now too?
Maybe, just maybe, they weren't making this segment with you in mind. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe, just maybe, they were thinking about kids.
Yeah.
Right. Like, not that hard to understand. But we, again, sort of looking at how we could penetrate the industry and build our own unique audience and be sustainable was to go, okay, I think there's a lot of people who miss wrestling, right?
Or maybe never experienced it. I know I didn't.
That's a fair point too.
I knew WWF. I remember learning about WCW, like the Jim Crockett era. I was like, yes. Wait, I missed all of this. Like,
me too.
So now seeing the callback.
Well, and not to mention the fact that, you know, I was born in '86. I was sort of first, you know, I guess exposed to the business in the early '90s. WCW in the early '90s, you know, was not that great. It was not like, so, you know, when I like Bret Hart was my hero, Davey Boy was my hero, you know, I'm looking at these guys and then I'm flicking the channel and seeing God knows what on, you know, on sort of Jim Herd era WCW. It's like, you know, it took me a minute too. And obviously, you know, some of the stuff that, like, they take Dusty Rhodes as an example, one of the greatest to ever do it. But I'm sure that when I was a kid, you know, I wouldn't have really got Dusty's appeal but then as an adult, I go, wow, like this guy's, you know, he's a genius, he's an unbelievable performer. So it's having that courage of conviction to just go, this is what the NWA is about. And I always try to make the point that we don't require you to hate any other type of wrestling to like ours, but just know that this is the type of wrestling that we do. Like, if WWE is McDonald's, we are more than happy to try to be In-N-Out Burger. Like, we're not going to try to do Happy Meals, and we're not going to try to do all of those different things, and we're not going to try to introduce the McRib, and we're not going to try to do like different novelty things and partner with movies and and blah 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 and all these different licensing. Like, we're going to do burgers and fries. We're going to do them in a sort of tried and true traditional way that people really like. And the key to it is that maybe you can't get it as easily and as frequently as you can get McDonald's, but when you can get it, you get excited about it, because it's a bit of a guilty pleasure, and it's a bit of a sort of like, what you're getting, and you can't wait to sink your teeth into it, because it's a bit of a good old-fashioned enjoyment. And that's pretty much like what I would love for the NWA to represent to fans, is like, hey, WrestleMania is all well and good, and man, the WWE's production values are second to none, and they are, a fantastic. I mean, they have an incredible business model, and they make, an incredible amount of money, and some of their guys are A-list, celebrities, and they get to do all the Tonight shows and this and that and everything else, and and they love to do everything except wrestling, but we do wrestling, right? We do wrestling, and we do it really well. We think we do wrestling better than anybody else.
Yeah. Again, it kind of goes back to not saying what you don't like, but
yeah,
they do.
We don't require you to hate WWE. We don't require you to hate AEW. We don't require you to hate Impact. We don't. I would love it if everybody watched everything.
They do their version of wrestling very well.
Right.
We're gonna pick our lane.
Right.
This version of wrestling.
Yes.
Wrestling.
100%.
Well, so
all right.
I think more people now than ever kind of need to remember that you don't have to always win. You can just not have an opinion sometimes. But I do want to touch briefly about what you have been doing on NWA shows. When you first started, especially, really when Power became a weekly show, it kind of felt like you were the brand representative, and kind of like, oh yeah, like not a baby face, but like proud champion. It seems like you're showing more of an edge these days, a heel, if you want to get into those terms. Was that a conscious effort to kind of maybe play a new role or tap into something, because you spent so many years now representing the NWA and kind of being the face of the promotion and doing all of that side? Is this just a natural progression, or was there a conscious effort into maybe telling a different story for yourself personally?
Well, at the risk of sounding like a wishy-washy answer, I think it's probably a little bit of both. I do think there was definitely some natural progression of it. I never intentionally sort of positioned myself as that sort of pseudo babyface character in the beginning. It really just stemmed from the appreciation that the audience had for the work I had done. I think, like, I don't, and I'm not trying to be pretentious when I say that. And you can never get everyone to agree on anything, but I think that overall, I feel like I've always had a pretty good sense of what the underlying kind of opinion is. And it felt to me that, particularly when we debuted the show, it would have been very difficult right off the bat to be the guy that people love to hate, because there was such a genuine sort of affection for the brand and for the fact that we'd got this show going. I mean, look, guys like Eddie Kingston were coming up to me in the backstage area and being like, "Hey, I just want to let you know that like we appreciate that, you know, this is happening because of what you've done. You know, like you've put the you went around the world wrestling in, you know, not particularly glamorous places, and wrestling, you know, sometimes not the greatest opponents in the world, to, you know, but all in the interest of trying to sort of reestablish the credibility of this and this brand, and, you know, the matches you've had and everything like that sort of helped build a level of interest to where it is, you know. And look, some of that credit belongs to Cody, some of that credit belongs to Marty, you know, the bigger names that I wrestled along the way to sort of reestablish the credibility of what we were doing, and the brand and the process. But once you know, I'm business, right? Like there's only so much business you can do in being the proud world champion, you know. Ultimately, like the money is in people wanting to see you get beat. So in my mind, yeah, once we had the pandemic, once we realized that through necessity as much as anything else, I'd been the champion for a hell of a long time. I figured that that it was time to start rubbing that in people's faces a little bit, because one way or another, people love to try to knock you down a peg or two. So my feeling on booking, you know, or creative, is there's no point swimming upstream. Like the chances are, if you pay attention, and social media, that's where social media can be very useful, because obviously you can get a very, you know, you can sort of take a cross section of sentiment and kind of get a general idea of where people's heads are at. And then I just sort of take it and lean that way with it. Go, okay, look, there's naturally some resentment starting to emerge. So let's go with it. Let's
lean into it.
Let's embrace it and go into it. Right. It's business, you know, and I like being the guy people love to hate. Like it's a good place to be.
Mm-hmm. We kind of saw that a little bit more this week. You've been saying as far as being no worthy title competition. I mean, I've enjoyed it. I don't think it's. I think it kind of goes full circle to how we started talking about how, you know, there's going to be people complaining about, oh, this, you know, criticizing your title reign for whatever reason, and now you're just kind of, okay, I'm going to take a little piece of what's really being said and putting it on screen. Okay, here's what you've pretty.
That's what you just described. Really is booking 101. When it's done right, you take whatever's real and you kind of just crank it up a little bit. And,
I didn't want to use the Spinal Tap reference, but turn it up.
No, right. Well, you turn the heat up a little bit, you know. I think sometimes what tends to happen now is that people have taken that principle and they've sort of oversimplified it. And so then you'll take, you know, someone will make one tweet and they'll try to build a whole angle around it. That's not enough. But it's kind of like, to me, I look at it as like, let's just turn the heat up on this a little bit and see if it takes. And if it takes, then we crank it up a little bit more, and, you know, and a little more and a little more. And the pieces will start to float to the top, you know, and you'll see what, you know, who emerges and what, because again, like, unless there really was one absolutely standout guy that was like, oh my God, this guy needs to be the champion. And I was doing it as a heel to sort of be kind of trying to keep away from this guy. Again, even what I said about that is somewhat sort of pushing on the truth, because we've got a lot of really good guys, but it's up to them. And this is 100% shoot. It's up to them for one of them to kind of break through and take advantage of their time on the show to make everybody go, that's the guy I want to see beat Aldis. You know, It has to be that way.
Mhm.
Like we before Eli Drake moved on, you know, and became LA Knight, doing a hell of a job. He and I would, you know, one of us would go out and do our promo at that show, and the other one would be waiting at the curtain, and we'd come back and we'd look at each other like, go on then, you know, go for it, beat that, you know. And it, like, we had that, like, we wanted that, like, with each other, because I knew at that point in time he was the you know, the most likely sort of candidate, you know. And hey, it's a real shame that things worked out the way they did with the pandemic and stuff, because obviously had that, you know, had that whole situation not been around, he, you know, we'd probably be building towards he and I at this point. But like, again, it doesn't matter, because it's all, you know, you just you take whatever's there and you build on it, right? Like, so that's why I'm comfortable kind of talking about that stuff, because it's like, we're the NWA, we build on authenticity. So it's like, hey man, is it Trevor Murdoch? Is Trevor Murdoch the guy who's going to sort of, you know, because I'll tell you this, when he first showed up on that, you know, in the first season, there was a very genuine and very unique reaction to him just from when he first walked through the curtain. You could feel the audience sort of go, oh, yes, like this guy, this show, this brand, it just works. Hell yeah. Like, because you talk about a guy who is an exceptional professional wrestler, but you talk about a guy who there was no correct vehicle for him. Well, now there absolutely is. And now there's a perfect opponent for him, you know? So it's like, now it's up to him to step up and be like, yeah, like you guys need to get behind me to go all the way. So we'll see.
Yeah, we will see if he's the guy. For now, I mentioned earlier, it's 914 days and counting. Is there one match in particular that stands out to you as one that represents what you were able to bring to the championship, or just maybe one that you think people should give another look?
Well, I would certainly say that the 2 out of 3 falls match with Cody and I, the return from All In, because obviously so much attention gets put on All In that even though we did very, very, very well with the return match NWA 70, you know, it obviously doesn't have the same level of significance to a lot of casual fans as All In. But that match was, you know, I was very proud of what we were able to do in that. Same with the match with Marty Scurll at the Crockett Cup of 19. And I would even say, in a different way, I would say that the match with Tim Storm on the first episode of NWA Power, on the debut episode of the show, simply because Tim and I represented we will always share a special chemistry with each other, simply because of the fact that we're the ones who really knew what we like, had the hardest the highest hill to climb with all this. Like, we had to get people to care about a match between a guy that most people had not heard of and another guy that a lot of people had forgotten about, and you know, try to get them to care. And we did, so much so that by the time we got to Power, keeping in mind that at this point I've, you know, headlined like the biggest non-WWE show in the modern era. We've had our own pay-per-views that have done really well. We're co-branding with Ring of Honor, and we're doing all this. We had a show that featured New Japan talent, CMLL talent. We're really leveled up. The fact that there was enough people had paid attention and gone back and sort of really digested the whole kind of the whole genesis of the modern incarnation of the NWA, to the point that was the match that made the most sense to do. And then to see the reaction of those people and to hear that, and to see how people feel about that match even now. And to me, I think just to do a match like that, and that was in 2019, but to do a match like that in the modern era where there's so much emphasis on like dives and high spots and, crazy amounts of like memorized kind of, stunts and, high impact moves and suplexing each other on your heads and all this kind of stuff, to do a match that was really kind of rugged and based around sort of physicality and emotion, and to get to really get to get people to really buy into that emotional ending and the tears and the sweat. It was like, that's what I got into this business to do, and I think from a sort of, I hate to use this word because it kind of sort of pretentious with wrestling, but from an artistic standpoint, I'm very proud of that whole show, because of the way that he and I, my promo, his promo, we teed it up. Brian Hebner, the referee, did an incredible job. Camille did an incredible job. All the way around, Cornette did an incredible job on the announcing, and Joe Galley. Like, the whole thing was perfect. I wouldn't change anything on it, and it's hard to say that about a lot of your stuff.
Yeah, I think when it all goes correctly and how you envisioned it, or maybe even better than you envisioned it, you see the reaction and immediate success. You guys can check out NWA on Fight. You can subscribe. 3 episodes of Power each month, Power Surge, tons of archive content. Wait and see what happens next. Who could be the next person to step up to the plate? Who could be the guy to knock you down off of your perch? But he's still the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. Nick Aldis, thanks very much for your time today.
No problem, Bill. Thank you.